Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is Simran. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, Simran.
Welcome. It is a delight to be with you again this week, and I am looking forward to our conversation today. When I think about life and look back on my own, I have been through so many different landscapes and dimensions. I actually asked for a lot that I got, verbally asked for it, and unknowingly did. And you did too. And right now, with the world the way it is, depending on your lens of perception, you might be experiencing something that you want to judge. Or you may have transcended judgment and are in between spaces where you are learning how to be more kind and gentle and compassionate. Or you may have taken the leap and truly soared into the spaces of unconditional love and neutrality, allowing yourself to view the world and all that it has as a gift. When we look at politics or all kinds of things happening all over the world, it can create those fluctuations in where we are and when we are. But learning to stabilize that, to ground ourselves, and to really be with everything but not be of it is part of our mastery. A long time ago, in some of my earlier books, I wrote a lot about how we are ascended masters, that we have to claim it, that we have to own it, that we have to integrate it and understand it, that we have to believe it, and we have to see it. And that means seeing our world in a certain way as well, seeing ourselves, and also making sure that we create vessels within us that are ready to take on the types of experiences and frequencies that are coming our way. My guest today is Maureen St. Germain, and she has written several books on dimensional living, on Akashic records, and particularly a series that has led to this latest book, which is called Living Your Best 5D Life. And it is filled with timeless tools to achieve and maintain your new reality. Maureen says within the book, the threshold for everyone has elevated. Like boats in a harbor, the rising tide lifts all boats. The physical side of life, for many, wants stasis. Staying the same feels good, at least for a while, because it gives a sense of security and predictability. Yet the mental and spiritual side of us needs more thinking time, more meditation time, and more simple quiet time alone and in nature. So what does this have to do with living your best 5D life? We're going to find out more today. This is Maureen's third installation in the 5D series following Mastering Your 5D Self and Waking Up in 5D. This new book opens the door to practical 5D living in the present moment. It's an easy-to-digest step-by-step toolkit on how to not only utilize, access, enter, and stay in 5D, but also how to live your best 5D life. Maureen St. Germain is an Akashic Records expert. She has been the founder of the St. Germain Mystery School, the Ascension Institute, and Founders Circle. She's an internationally recognized teacher and intuitive, and she's also the creator of the app Illuminate, which is rich with guided meditations, tunings, chants, and activations. I'm excited to dive into this next book, Maureen, so welcome to 1111 Talk Radio. It is a delight to have you here.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It should be quite the adventure. You have already gone deep down the rabbit hole yourself, so we should be able to support our listeners in a very big conversation.
It is a deep rabbit hole, and unknowingly, many of us tumble into it. And oftentimes don't realize initially on our journeys that there are these different dimensions. But the terms 3D, 4D, 5D have been thrown around quite a bit, especially since 2012. And you definitely have been a steward and a guide for humanity in moving us towards that 5D. But when we look at the world today, there's a lot of it that still seems to be in that 3D sector. And I think that some people may want an understanding as to what these different dimensions are as we start off this conversation. Can you help to distinguish what these different dimensions are? And although they are external, are these dimensions also internal?
Yes, they are both external and internal. And the three dimensions can be defined as third dimension being the world that we have known for a long, long time. It's filled with lots of variety and color and dissension and extremes of highs and lows. And fourth dimension is a transition zone. It's not what the scientists tell us is time. It's a vibrational data set that's slightly faster than third dimension, so things happen faster. And people who've had emotional traumas know this. They can feel how fast things are happening. And then in fifth dimension, the easy description is heaven on earth. It is the place where we know what to say, we know what to do when it comes to interacting with other people, we know how to be supportive and kind, and we also know how to take care of ourselves. So the quality of life is significantly different in that we're not keeping score on ourselves or others. And that's a big one because practically everybody keeps score on themselves or others a little bit every day. You know, you look in the mirror, oh, I'm having a bad hair day, or oh my gosh, this has to happen. What if I don't get it done? So we all have these little things that tug at us, especially if you have family and responsibilities that pull you outside of taking care of yourself. So 5D gives you the opportunity to be in harmony with yourself, with others, and the earth. One of the easy ways to kind of imagine this is if all the grocery stores instantly converted and the only thing that was in the store was stuff that was healthy. So the things that we currently buy or consume that we know are not good for us, but we like the taste or its habit, they're just gone. And we don't even remember that we used to like those things. So it's not like you're feeling bad because you can't have this anymore. No. It's more like, oh, look at all the cool things we have here. And the loss isn't there. You know, when a child grows up, rarely do they long for, rainbow worms or gummy bears or things from their childhood that were their favorite because they have a taste that is expanded, but it doesn't include those basic things that used to be so important to them.
You referenced me going down the rabbit hole when we first started the show, and I can see a time where I was very much living kind of on autopilot, unconscious, even transitioned into a place where I was creating really beautiful things in the world in an attempt to raise my own level of awareness and presence. And that's actually what started a lot of 1111's work. And then there came a moment after so much personal growth work where I hit a trauma that made me pause and say, if after all that work I've hit this place, then I've missed something. I've really missed the tiniest cracks and crevices within myself. And that was the moment that I chose to really go inward for a long period of time and, in a sense, devote myself to my inner darkness as much as I had my light so that I could discover what was hidden. Is that place the 4D? Because I did learn a tremendous amount there, and it felt like a transition, but it also was the place that I learned compassion and kindness. And if that is the 4D, is that a necessary place for people to at least touch into, to be able to know kindness and compassion for themselves, to be able to give it in the 5D to the rest of the world?
In your case, it was very likely 4D because it is a place where we have the dark night of the soul. It is the zone that is high in emotion and high in intensity. But I also want to say that this point, this peak point for you and for many, I see as a point where you've thought you have dealt with so many things. You thought you had achieved this level of spiritual mastery. And I don't mean in an ego way, but in a really personal, sincere way. And then suddenly something big happens that kind of throws you in. You wonder what could possibly be going on. And what I have been shown by my guides is that each of us master 51%. And that gives us impetus to move into higher realms, to step out of our old behaviors, to launch into a higher zone. But the minute we do that, then the 49% that we haven't resolved yet shows up. So then you have this big conflict or this big wall of energy that needs to be cleared and broken through. So each of us can become masters with only 51% of our stuff resolved. However, as we move through it, once we've achieved that level, then we're going to finish taking care of the rest of it because we're in a much better place. We've got our act together. We understand. We're compassionate with ourselves. And I hope this isn't too extreme, but I think of a picture of a woman changing a baby's diaper or a man changing a baby's diaper. The first few times, you don't know what you're doing and you're struggling. And then after you've got your system down of how you're going to do it with this baby, you get a rhythm. And then something happens and the baby gets a rash. So you take care of that. And then everything's cool. And then the rash comes back. And you don't look at what you used to clear the rash and say, well, that didn't work. How could it possibly be coming back? And the answer is, well, use the same thing that worked before. It's just another layer for you to clear. And it does sound a lot like what you went through in terms of, being in a good place and then hitting another wall, so to speak.
Well, and I know that we all create our own realities, and it is set up that way for us to discover our mastery, to allow us to open to these many different realms beyond time, into timelessness and into our bounteousness. Is 4D required, or can people move from 3D to 5D with many of the prayers, many of the meditations, upgrading their physical health, those types of tools and techniques? Or is there a certain level of themselves that has to come to that place of awareness?
Well, first of all, we move from 3D to 4D to 5D many times throughout the day. It's a sine wave. And even though the sine wave is moving upward, we're still sliding up and down from our mastery to our 3D self and back up again. And that's something that I always misunderstood. I always initially thought, once you're 5D, you're 5D. But it's not true. We're sliding back and forth. So yes, 4D is part of the transition, but it doesn't have to be a big one. I'm reminded to share with you my analogy between the dimensions with music. And I'm not the world's best singer, but I want you to hear this vocally because I think you'll hear something, and hopefully when you hear it, you'll understand. When you sing a song, and I'm just going to go through the major scale, do, re, mi, we know those pitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then if we do the equivalent of a major chord, it's 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. And then if we want to transition into 5, we go 1, 4, 4, 4 goes. Where does it go? It wants to go down, or it wants to go up to 5. And when it gets to 5, it wants to go to 1. So what happens is the dimensions are a vibrational data set that we have capacity to experience simultaneously, but we selectively separate them in order to experience them, much like we select a radio station on our dial.
That ma-
Yeah, go ahead.
Good. That makes a lot of sense in terms of how things are moving and fluctuating, because life is moving and fluctuating with us, and that helps us to see where we are undulating in those patterns as well.
And I want to add that fourth dimension, I joke around and say, well, it's like Grand Central Station or an airport. You don't go there to spend the night. You go there to get somewhere else. And if your plane is delayed, you're stuck. But most of us go to the airport and get on a plane and go. So the idea that fourth is required is true, but is it required to be a long adventure? No, it can be very fast.
Now, in the book, you talk about how technology on Earth has really raced ahead of spirituality, and that this is a time for our spirituality to catch up. So does that happen through a series of steps, or is it a type of spiritual technology that we have to upgrade into to kind of match or exceed the technology of Earth?
Well, I think you framed it very well, and I would say it's both. And I especially like your second definition, because once we hit a certain level, things don't bother us the way they used to. You know, you could have someone who commits an affront in 3D and you would find yourself reacting. Maybe you would be upset. Maybe you would fuss at the person. Maybe you would just fuss at whoever would listen because you don't want to make a scene. So that's the 3D response. In 5D, the same thing can happen and you don't even notice it. You don't even mind. You just take it in stride. And it's a little bit like the grandma who's looking after, a toddler. The toddler does stuff. Grandma doesn't mind. She's just so happy to be with the toddler. And I have noticed for myself, especially, and my students as well, that the shift is subtle. It's so subtle that you could be lying in bed that night and think about your day and then stop and go, whoa, I used to get upset when such and such happened. I didn't even react. That is so cool. And it's only in hindsight that you recognize that you have shifted. That's pretty amazing.
That is amazing, because one thing that I think is a great awareness for individuals as they raise that vibrational frequency is the degree of judgment that we carry for others and ourselves, and allow that to be neutralized. But the other thing that I discovered in my self-created lengthy journey through 4D is the amount of fight that was in my system. And
the what was in your system?
the amount of fight that was unknowingly in my system. And I think that that's something in our culture, especially, we're kind of taught to fight for what we need, to fight for, our place in the world, to fight for what's right, there's just a sense of fight along with flight. And we often think of fight or flight in that fear response in one way, but there's a really subtle energy of fight that I think rests beneath people. And you write in the book, it's not for us to be warriors. It is not for us to deny the past, but for us to be more connected with ourselves, to use our energy and strength more for bringing ourselves into so much alignment that our irresistible presence invites cooperation and kindness. But there has to be a level of awareness, too, of those things to be able to let them go, so that we can be receptive to that cooperation and kindness and compassion that's available. Is that part of the opening that happens with 5D?
Yes. And there's also another layer that's impacting people adversely, and that is all of the unseen waves that come at us, wireless, Wi-Fi, our cell phones, our TV and radio towers, all of these energies are carrying messages over and above what we think they're carrying. So there's a message of, I got to get my fair share. And it's this sense of it's not fair. And so in those energy fields, as you say, we're taught, and I will add to it that we're bombarded with those vibrations that tell us it's not fair, I got to get my fair share kind of thing, which is that fight, that resistance to whatever's in front of us. So part of moving out of judgment does not mean you completely are neutral with everything. It means you develop discernment. And the discernment has a different barometer or a different temperature. So in 3D, maybe that judgment, if you could imagine a temperature gauge, and it would, go way up high. And then in 5D, you have the same temperature gauge, but it doesn't put you into that high zone of discomfort, which makes you feel like you're not safe. And when you feel like you're not safe, of course you want to fight. So the energy, it's almost like the translation is softer, and the communication that you and I have at the 5D level is above this layer of bombardment that's coming at everyone. And so, as we elevate ourselves, we become less and less affected by these outside energies that are I don't want to say causing, but they're influencing they're influencing your reaction and your interaction with others.
And it's not from a place of surrender. It's more out of a groundedness in sovereignty that comes about, correct?
Yes, exactly so. Yeah, and I think sovereignty is a great new S word.
Yes, yes. And I love how you go into many of the practical things that we have to do in order to prepare our vessel, because I think that we're also at a time where, because the world is so busy, that many times the thing that goes by the wayside is our body. It is our breath. It is an understanding, as you say, that chi is the carrier of all things, that chi orchestrates everything. So speak a little bit more to this quality of awareness that has to take place in order for us to really amplify the power and presence of our chi to access 5D ongoingly.
Well, I've been studying Qigong with Lee Holden for probably 30 years. And my knowledge of Qi comes from the tradition of Qigong. And surprisingly to a lot of people, Qigong is the source of all other martial arts forms. So Qigong came first. And the idea that we could garner our energy and gather it and use it in a very focused way is unfamiliar to us because we don't see it. And as children, we're taught that if you can see it, it's real. If you can't, it's not. And we know from our knowledge of radios and transmissions of all kinds that there are energy waves that cannot be seen that can affect us. Now, what's interesting in this case is Qi is one of those forces that moves through us like energy waves, and we can gather it up and garner it and put it to work for ourselves. If you're a person that has hair that's long, let's say any length that's long, if you don't comb it, if you don't take care of it, and you just let it go, pretty soon it's a mess. And The idea here is that when you tame it, you have a beautiful hairdo, beautiful hair around your head or wherever you have hair. So taming the energy is what's important. Understanding that that's our job. Even though we can't see it, we can move it and move it through our body and create healing for ourselves and others.
We always create our reality. And what we must understand is that we can look at life as happening to us. We're still creating that reality. We can also look at life as happening for us. And even there, through the benefit of how life is happening, in its ups and downs, we are still creating our reality. And then there comes a point where life truly happens through us, and we learn to consciously create our reality. Is this the moment that you step into 5D? Maureen St. Germain, in her new book, says, the new frequencies are significantly different from our 3D reality, so much so that it would cause cognitive dissonance of some kind of emotional reaction, perhaps unpleasant, for you if you could access them before you are ready. This is why you may resist, or why family members may resist. Even when you yearn for family members to join you in your thinking, their own belief systems may be so entrenched that releasing their version of reality would cause them significant inner discord. Today we are talking about Maureen St. Germain's latest book, Living Your Best 5D Life. It's the third book in the installation of the 5D series. The first two books were Mastering Your 5D Self, and the second, Waking Up in 5D. It is time to open the door to practical 5D living in the present moment through the tools and the techniques that she shares to achieve and maintain your new reality. I want to tell you that Maureen does a lot of beautiful things. Number one, you want to find out about her Illuminate app, where she has all types of meditations and chants and talks that you can access. So download that. The second thing is you can go to her website, practicalmystic.comi.io. That's practicalmystic.comi.io, where you'll find everything. Or you can go to stgermainmysteryschool.com. She has a Founder Circle business training on Akashic Records, if that's of interest to you, if you're wanting to build a business, or if you're wanting Akashic Records training. She also is going to be present at the Conscious Life event that is in February. Expo. Thank you, Maureen. Expo that is in February. And she has numerous training programs online and available anytime. So definitely check her out at practicalmystic.comi.io and definitely order your copy of Living Your Best 5D Life. We'll be right back with more on this right after these messages.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Do you want more? More joy, more abundance, more power and presence? How would it feel to have more loving relationships? More empowered community, greater fulfillment, and life purpose? The 1111 Mastermind community inspires, empowers, guides, and supports transformation. Shift your mind, expand your heart, deepen insights, let go and chart a new course, dream a new dream. The 1111 Mastermind community is an online portal for personal transformation and soulful expansion. Go to courses.1111mag.com. That's courses.1111mag.com. Change begins with you. Let it be simple, convenient, and transformative. The time is now. Step through the 1111 gateway. Courses.1111mag.com.
Have you seen 1111? Do you wonder why certain numbers keep showing up in your life? 11, 111, 22, 33, 444? People all over the world are seeing 1111 and learning the language of universal communication. Subscribe to 1111 Magazine today. www.1111mag.com. 1111 Magazine is a bi-monthly print publication that offers a rich, multi-sensory experience. As you engage with experts and topics of consciousness, become enlightened, empowered, and energized, so you live a passionate and authentic life of conscious choices. 1111 Magazine, a daily staple for lifting the mindset, discovering the heart, and stepping into conscious living. 1111 Magazine. Order now at www.1111mag.com. 1111mag.com.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You are listening to 1111 Talk Radio. Simran is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at IamSimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
I want to announce that 1111 Magazine is creating some beautiful new things. Be on the lookout for those in the written form as well as on audio. In addition, I have been creating a lot of different audiobooks for many amazing authors, and I want you to go and check them out on Audible. There are some beautiful books by Paul Farini that have been wonderful, and also quite a few books by Inner Traditions authors, one of which the author today is from the Inner Traditions book publishing company. So definitely check out some of the books that are on Audible and start to grow your mind, your body, your heart, and your spirit. A lifelong interest in the Akashic Records resulted in Maureen St. Germain being granted access to this dimension that has been off limits to most of humanity for millions of years. Founder of Akashic Records International, Maureen is an extremely accurate Akashic Records guide and instructor. Additionally, she has St. Germain Mystery School, and here you can find all kinds of training programs online and available anytime. You can also go to practicalmystic.comi.io for the Founders Circle Business Training, Akashic Records, and definitely look up the Conscious Life Expo, and you can see her there in February. She has many prayers in the book and offers many of the meditations and access to ascended masters that can support you in your own fifth dimensional awareness and presence. And one thing she says is to repeat this phrase at least once daily. I am asking for a day of heaven on earth for me and everyone I'm in contact with, and everyone I am in contract with. This key phrase will change everything for you and will improve your communications with everyone you talk to. Maureen, welcome back. What
Thank
this
you.
really says is that we have to be conscious and proactive in our degree of presence, awareness, and interaction with the different dimensions in order to activate that in our lives. And that comes from our affirmations, our prayers, our mantras, and our beingness. Talk a little bit about what a day looks like for you practice-wise or for someone that can really help them ground into making 5D an everyday living reality.
Okay. So the first thing I recommend is that when you go to bed at night, you announce to yourself, I'm waking up in 5D. And in all my books, I believe I have the bedtime prayer. And it's a way to help you remember to ask for what you really want. And then in the morning, when you wake up, even if you're, struggling or in pain or anything that is disquieting, the energy of 5D will settle in and you will feel uplifted. You will feel better in spite of whatever's going on. So the morning prayer is the one you've already read for us. I'm asking for a day of heaven on earth. And then you might take time And I recommend that you set a schedule to meditate. Some people meditate only for 15 minutes. Some people meditate for 30 minutes. And some people give themselves a full hour. But give yourself what you can. And if you must, set your alarm a few minutes early, 30 minutes early, and get up and do that meditation so that it sets the tone for your day. There are 2 sleep cycles. And the 2 sleep cycles are from when you first fall asleep to 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and then there's a break, and then there's another 90-minute cycle. And so many people wake up in the middle of the night, and that is also an ideal time to get up and meditate, because when you're done with the meditation, you always fall asleep. It's very rare that you're going to get up and meditate and then try to go back to sleep, and it doesn't happen, because it does. And because there are so many ways to meditate, there's no reason not to. Many people have what I call monkey mind, and their busy minds won't let them settle down to do a quiet meditation. So that's why I created all these guided meditations. So the guiding takes you to a high place, and then your mind is quiet automatically. In a typical day, I always bless my food at every meal, and I say the blessing out loud. My husband likes it because then he doesn't feel like he needs to do that. I've done it. And then I do work at my desk still, and I have time that I go to the gym. And before I had a gym membership, and when I lived in a place where there wasn't one, then what I would do is I would start my morning with Qigong and then do other exercises like melt and or stretching or yoga. These kinds of things keep the body limber. And then in the middle of the day, when I have been working with other people, and maybe I've been on the air with people, my muscles tense up as I focus all of my energy on the words. So then I like to get on the mat and work that out. I always go to bed by 9 at the latest, and sometimes I head for bed by 8:15. But I have an evening routine that takes me a good 20 minutes. So even if I'm headed to the bedroom by 9, I'm not in the bed much before 9:30. And that allows me the freedom then to wake up well rested.
A lot of people use the words balance, discipline, conscious when they are looking at how they are in the world. But when I'm hearing about the practices that you're talking about that you use and that you recommend for other individuals, it seems like there's a very subtle but distinct difference in the balance, discipline, and service to self that gets created, that is almost allowing the self to become more important, not in a narcissistic way, but in a way that then can actually be in the world more powerfully for self and service.
Exactly. And, especially women, we've been taught to set aside our own needs for our children, for our husbands or beloveds. And we tend to minimize our own needs. And, especially during child raising, when the children are little, sometimes that's absolutely necessary to put your child's needs ahead of your own. However, it doesn't have to stay that way, and it doesn't have to stay with us. And when we take care of ourselves first, we're in a really good position to take care of others. And it's like the saying, put your own air mask on first before you help another.
Later in the book, you talk a lot about the feminine and the masculine energy. And you talk about how back in a period in, I think it was 2012, when you were going into the pyramids or the caves, you were asked to lead in and lead out. And the wise one that was with you had said women are going to lead, or the feminine will lead the way. And I think a lot of people take that at face value, thinking that it's about women, but it's really about the feminine energy within us as men and women, correct? It's about no longer being the unhealthy masculine forcing and the unhealthy feminine manipulating or subservient, but our feminine receptivity. Is that correct?
Exactly. Not only receptivity, but the state of wonder is very feminine because it allows us to be open to possibilities and solutions and ideas that as we expand our consciousness, as we meditate more, as we connect more with nature, our ability to perceive the world around us expands. And when we stay in wonder and we're not in this masculine naming or defining way, we actually learn more about the reality that we're co-creating. It's quite amazing. It's information just floats in.
It is a beautiful thing to see the information float in that way. And what I've come to learn is that when we stay in that state of wonder and receptivity of the strong feminine, we've got that sacred residency within in that way, then it is for us to wait for that masculine, that divine masculine within to become inspired before acting. I think a lot of our world has gotten into that habit of pushing the masculine out rather than understanding its service to the feminine within. Is that correct? Is that how our masculine and energies, feminine energies are intended to work, or is there something else the masculine side of us is intended to do?
I like the way you put it in the beginning part of that phrase. And it's true, the masculine energy can rise for the occasion, and it doesn't need to be front and center all the time. And we have been encouraged to be in that front and center energy because it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning segment. There's a quality of life that tells us there's not enough. It's not true. There is plenty. There's plenty of time, there's plenty of money, there's plenty of resources. But if we don't believe it, we attract that disbelief. And when the male energy takes action, it literally wants action. It does not want thinking and processing. But a balanced male spends a lot of time planning out before he executes, let's say, the building of a deck or the fixing of a piece of machinery. So we give ourselves the opportunity to express in both ways. One of the people that I studied with said, her wisdom, his way. Her wisdom, his way. And so a woman can offer her wisdom. I think it would be helpful if you did this and this and this. But the execution is upon the male. So just because a woman, me, you, or any of our listeners who are women, just because you know the best way to do something does not mean that the person who's executing it will do it or be able to do it the way you know is the best way. So your wisdom gives you answers, but the execution must fall upon the male expression. And a classic opportunity to learn in a relationship is to let yourself be heard and then back off on whether or not it's accepted or understood or used.
It sounds like those steps, that level of presence and patience, helps to build that compassion that is so much a part of 5D life. Can you speak a little bit more to compassion and unconditional love in that 5D experience and how to more consistently hold that as opposed to what might be in the 3D or 4D?
Okay, so first of all, we need to understand that those words that you've used, love, compassion, understanding, and so on, are our 3D labels for a perfectly normal 5D behavior. So in 5D, that's our new normal. So we don't need to look upon it as being special. It's how we are. It's quite interesting. You wouldn't think of being otherwise. When you entertain someone and they come into your home, usually you offer them something to drink. Can I get you something to drink? And the idea of having someone come in and sit down and not offering them something would feel like you've missed a step. So in 5D, we are automatically choosing that. We're automatically speaking that without realizing that it's different from the way we used to be.
It sounds
So you
like
don't have
it's more being as opposed to doing or even speaking of it.
Yes. And, there's a phrase in one of the work that I do that you fake it till you make it. And you fake it initially. When we're taught about compassion, we might not feel compassionate. But when we embody compassion, we reach a point where there is no other way to be. And that's 5D.
That's beautiful. As individuals are moving through this upgrade within themselves, there can tend to be different symptoms and experiences that start to happen. And in the book, you go into symptoms of approaching the ascension. Talk a little bit about what those types of symptoms might look like and the inclination that a person might have to think there's actually something wrong when there's really just something leveling out.
Yeah, that's a really important piece that a lot of people don't realize. And of course, the very first thing to put your attention on is the whole idea that let's eliminate anything that might be seriously wrong with you before you start attributing it to ascension symptoms, because although those symptoms might be obvious, it's also important to understand that there might be something seriously wrong with you that you need to have fixed by the allopathic system. And the idea here is if everything has been eliminated and they tell you there's nothing wrong, and now you're starting to feel like they think maybe it's all in your head, that's when you know to look through the ascension symptoms, which can include random headaches or migraines, stomach ache, nausea, diarrhea. As your pineal expands, you might get a certain kind of headache that always shows up in the crown area of your head. You might feel like you need more sleep and you don't understand because you already had a good night's rest. And this is our 3D label. Oh, I don't understand. I already had a good rest. And in 5D, if you have the capacity to do this when you're sleepy, tired, take a nap. Just take a nap and wake up well rested and refreshed. Sometimes when we're integrating, the calibration just won't go. It's like trying to screw something into a pre-made hole, and we keep trying, we keep missing, and then we kind of relax our energy and soften our grip, and it goes easily. So rest is very important. And if you find you need more sleep or you're sleeping 9 or 10 hours a day, again, have yourself checked out. But once you have established that the doctors are not finding anything, then you go into meditation. There was a time, for example, this seems so wild. This goes way back into the early 90s. I was having a terrible problem with stomach distension. And I would have flatulence, and it was noisy, Wasn't smelly, but it was a big embarrassment. I'd come into my office after lunch and have to close the door. So I went to the doctor. They said, you're just getting old, which I thought was hilarious because I wasn't that old. And I was annoyed at the same time. So I took it into meditation. And in meditation, I was told, quit eating bread. So I quit eating bread completely. And 90 or 95% of the symptoms disappeared.
Mm.
And that was long before gluten-free was a thing. Long before. Gluten-free wasn't even introduced as a concept until in the late 90s. And because I had already been gluten-free for so long, that was a welcome change for people to be able to actually buy something that was pre-made that way. And so the symptoms that you have that come upon you that you can't make sense of may very well be part of your ascension symptoms. I even know people who've had diarrhea that comes and goes and they can't pinpoint it. And they think there might be something wrong. They have themselves checked out. Nothing's wrong. Then again, you're purging yourself from whatever it is that you can't get rid of any other way. And so the symptoms are often symptoms that are annoying and persistent. And when we resist, they seem to not go anywhere. They stay. So part of the process is to notice and then slow everything down and find out what is it that's going on here. And when you ask the question and you stay and wonder, I wonder why I keep having a stomach ache. I wonder why I keep having this headache. Not I'm sick and tired of having a headache, or I can't get rid of this headache. None of that. But I wonder why. What happens is you get told. You might get told in that moment, or the answer might float in. But when the answer floats in, it's clear. It's crystal clear. I wonder why.
I loved in the book where you talk about GPS and how GPS was created so that we would start to listen to the voice, and it would be supportive for us to listen to our inner voice. I thought that was so powerful. You also have in the book so many things about how time can be bent and we can shift time, we can shift the weather, and all of these prayers and introductions to different ascended masters or beings that can support us when we call them in. One of the things that fascinated me was where you talk about the universe not being infinite in the way that people say, but that all of creation actually needs a boundary, and that the boundary is what creates between everything and possibility or probability. Can you talk a little bit more about that boundary?
Yes. This is very interesting because I often download information from my guides, and this was one of those things. And it was back in the early 90s. And I began to understand that if you didn't have a clear boundary around you, how would you be separate from Source? So it led me to understand that we separate from that which is inseparable in order to increase our experience, our knowing, our database.
We separate from that which is inseparable, a powerful place to leave you to be in wonder. This change in the world that you hope for, that we all hope for, is coming, albeit slowly. Everyone will have the chance to be an ascended master on the earth, living, loving, sharing, growing, and evolving. The best way to lead is not by persuasion, but with patience and by example. This is where humanity is headed, for each one of us to become an ascended master, alive in our physical bodies, utilizing all of our God-given powers. You no longer need to die to be an ascended master. This is from Maureen St. Germain's latest book, Living Your Best 5D Life. Go ahead and get that one and the other two in this trilogy, Mastering Your 5D Self and Waking Up in 5D, so that you can have the complete collection and also have these timeless tools to achieve and maintain your new reality. Find out more about all that Maureen is doing at practicalmystic.comey.io or go to stgermainmysteryschool.com. Definitely check out her Founders Circle business training with Akashic Records if you are wanting to grow a business, and also all of the other training programs that are online and available anytime. Thank you so much, Maureen, for being on 1111 Talk Radio. It was an honor and a delight. And until next week, I am Simran. In love, of love, with love, and as love. Be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living here on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Remember, you are not on the journey. You are the journey.